A love that gives everything. A love that cares for everything and everyone. There is no discrimination in love. There is no political bias or partisanship in love. Intentions must gravitate towards a love that engenders even greater love. A love that does not place self-interest first. A love that is not associated or mistaken for hubris, an over-obsession with one's self. A love that puts us at the service of others. Love that allows us to see the good in others and to target that good, to allow for the blossoming of humanity within every individual. Of course, it is a challenge. Of course, we lose some along the way. Of course, at times we may be taken advantage of. But ultimately, love conquers all. It is not just a saying that a family that genuinely loves stays together. It's not possible for anything else to be the end result in a family where there is genuine love. In 2019, Vincentians must consistently gravitate towards a love that engenders even greater love. A love that builds, not destroys. In 2019, we must be looking out for each other, caring for each other, sharing ourselves with each other, and sharing that which we have to make all of us better people, to make all our communities better, and to make St. Vincent and the Grenadines a better place. Our next resolution is to place the family first. Place the family first. In sociology, we acknowledge the family as the most fundamental social unit. Whatever form that family may take, whether it be single parent, whether it be matrifocal, whatever form it may take, legal or non-legal unions, what have you. The family is the fundamental social unit. And for many of us, the first thing after God is family. But we have witnessed in this country the untrammeled or the near untrammeled destruction of the family. In so doing, destroying the very fabric of our society. But we have been for some time on this program been appealing to Vincentian politicians to lead lives that are more respectful of their own families, so that they can become good examples, not just of fancy political rhetoric, not just of the gift of gab, but good examples of a lifestyle that emerges because of their family commitment. One is uncertain as to how the wives of some Vincentian politicians are able to stomach the debauchery and infidelity of their husbands. It is unfortunate that so many of our politicians, young and old, find it appropriate to subject their wives and their children to the shame of knowing that they are engaging in extensive infidelity and wanton pursuit of sexual encounters. How many families in this country have already been destroyed by politicians and high-ranking officials? We are talking here of their own families and the families of others. How many? Should we not ask, dear friends? Should we not ask that for 2019, we try to persuade our politicians and high-ranking officials in Vincentian society to change their ways of behaving and to allow their own families to grow as they should, to become good examples to our youths and to their own children in our society, so that they may grow as they should, to establish their own wholesome family types, families that are grounded in love, love that is genuine, not manipulative. If we believe that the family is so important, then all of us need to make the concerted effort to do better as husbands and wives, as brothers and sisters, to build our society. We do not have to sit and wait until we hear it from some pastor in the church. We do not have to sit and wait until we hear it from some guidance counselor as we try to recoup the destruction that we have caused. But if we do the other resolutions that we have already mentioned in this program, we may very well find a commitment to family that is transformative in nature. That provides good example for its membership. That exudes good confidence and support for families around, to facilitate an enriched Vincentian society. The family is the most critical institution in our society. And if we make it right, if we do it right, every community will be enhanced. And all of Vincentian society will be the better for it. let us work on the family. You know, people use, sometimes people ask, why are we emphasizing the politicians? Because we vote for them. We put them into positions of leadership. And that should be because of what they stand for, not just in terms of politics, but as human beings in our society. They should serve as good examples. And that's why it hurts when politicians lie and treat it as a joke. When they make false promises knowing that they are false. When they engage in corruption and know that members of the society are aware of the level of their corruption. We put them there because we believe they're deserving of being leaders. But because we have put them there, it gives us a right to hold them to account. They must be accountable to us. If they cannot be good examples of what it means to be a better Vincentian, then they ought not to be there. They ought not to be given your support. If they cannot in their personal lives show respect for their wives, their children, and their families, we ought not to be supportive of them. And we ought to tell them so. If we recognize that they are not prepared to live wholesome lives, we should not be supportive of them. While it is true that people vote for political parties and their philosophies and their ideas, we must never lose sight of the fact that in each constituency, it is the individual that we have to focus on. Not just the party. Is that individual capable of being a good example? A quality family builder? If not, reject them. If not, reject them. Call them to account and expose them for who they are, so that the society may know and may reject them for being poor examples in our midst. Vincentians in 2019 must take responsibility for ensuring that we are a family-oriented society. And that we understand the family is the core of our social fabric. And that we must call our members or leaders to account. Our next resolution is to end political tribalism. Throughout the history of conquest and colonization in this Caribbean of ours, we have been treated to political tribalism. The colonial masters insisted on what became a systemic divide and rule policy. And to ensure compliance in respect of that systemic divide and rule policy, the colonizers considered it necessary to have the slaves come to an acceptance that they were slaves because they were inferior. They were slaves because they were inherently inferior to the colonizers. That's why they were enslaved by them. The colonizers engaged in the psychological strategy of socializing the slaves into believing that their deficiencies, their inferiority lay in the mere fact of their color. And so dark skin was associated with inferiority. And inferiority in all aspects of one's life. The idea was to cultivate successive generations that grew up enslaved and imbued with a fundamental belief that the mere color of their skin was an indication of their inferiority to those who held them captive and enforced labor. "400 years of slavery have left blacks with a psychological syndrome of dependence. A psychological syndrome of dependence that begins with our acknowledgement that by our very color we are inferior. And that we must always be led by those of the lighter hue. Even our young girls have been socialized into rejecting some of our young men who approach them with a disparaging remark, "Move your black ugly self. Move your black ugly self." It's almost as if it is ingrained in us. There are endless studies in this Caribbean of ours of black families. Once they happen to have a child of a lighter complexion, that child becomes the family's doyen, becomes the escape route to liberation within the society. That child gets the best of everything. That is the nature of what has happened to us over 400 years of slavery. And the struggle over so many decades to liberate ourselves from the shackles of physical slavery has left us with centuries of effort seeking to emancipate ourselves, as Bob Marley says, from mental slavery. And alas, we have not been able to do that for the most part. When once we thought here in St. Vincent that the Grenadines we had achieved that level of emancipation, our politics tells us otherwise. Our social reality tells us otherwise. Four centuries of enslavement have left us divided and tribal. Divided and tribal. And today, amazingly, what we are experiencing across so many parts of the world is a resurgence of that thinking. a growing return to the belief among those of the lighter hue that there is something so deficient about us as black people by the very fact of our color, that we do not deserve to lead. We do not deserve to lead. And that is why we could have gotten the concept, this very silly concept, of an application in our society, in our Vincentian politics. Who do you prefer, Christ or Barabbas? That is why we could have gotten the cockamamie issue of who George Bush would recognize if he came in the middle of the night. Who among our political leaders he would have recognized? And when challenged, we are told it has nothing to do with racism. It has nothing to do with racism. For people who are students of history, who have an understanding of what it has meant over all these years of slavery, colonization, authoritarianism. And we have a resurgence of that kind of thinking in our contemporary period. We are experiencing a resurgence where people believe we must know our place because of our color, and that we must be a forever subject people. Our resolution for 2019 must be to reject that type of thinking, to combat it with excellence in everything we do, to lead in education, to lead in family life, to lead in the development of our personalities, striving always to be the best we can possibly be, applying everything that is important to the realization of who we are and what we can be as a people. We must commit to the total rejection of that line of reasoning. We must declare each day that we have life. Never again racism. Never again slavery. We must socialize our children into the fundamental belief that we have the right to be equal to all men and women, and that we commit ourselves to realizing that reality. Wherever we see racism rearing its ugly head, in whatever form, we must fight against it with every fiber of our being. We were born free, and we must reject any attempt to use color to change that reality. We must resist the tendency to have us return to the tribalism of old through political partisanship. We must reject the concept of benevolent dictatorship. We call on all Vincentians today, New Year's Day 2019, to commit to mental freedom, a recognition of who we are as individuals, and of an understanding that only by overcoming political tribalism can we ever make good on the struggles of Châteaubriand and the slaves who once toiled our land through force to create a wholesome St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our next resolution has to do with fair play, objectivity, transparency, and meritocracy. You know, friends, many Vincentians stayed silent when the opposition New Democratic Party raised the issue of accountability for the monies spent on the Argyle International Airport. If indeed, as some would want us to believe, the construction of the Argyle International Airport was a national project, then there would not have been a need or feeling on the part of some that it was necessary to embed in concrete the star, the symbol of the Unity Labour Party, as part of the opening of that institution. The fact that it became so much of an embarrassment led to its removal. But the damage was already done. It was clear to many that the Argyle International Airport was not a national project, but a political party project of the ruling regime. But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that taxpayers' money went into, in part, the construction of the Argyle International Airport. There is an understanding that whenever national funds are used, they must be accounted for. But when there is a national project, regardless of the sources of funding, it seems appropriate that the public be provided with an account of monies received and of monies expended. Our society, under the traditions that we have over the years acquired, possesses an understanding that objectivity, transparency, fair play, and meritocracy are treasured features. But it seems that with regard to an airport that took almost 10 years to complete, the Argyle International Airport, no one seems to have the right to call upon the government to account for the $700 million plus that was allegedly spent on the airport. If you are not prepared to give accountability and to facilitate transparency, then you cannot fault the people of the country from having absolutely no confidence in the statistics that you have declared. So because you're unwilling and hiding behind the fact that it was not a statutory body that held responsibility for the process, for the project, then nobody has any right to accept your figure of 700 plus million. Because there's no reason to trust that. If you don't trust the people enough to give them the information they deserve about every aspect of the airport's construction and its funding, and why should they trust you to be telling them the truth about any aspect of the airport. In the recent past, and we highlighted it in our program Just Another Look, first aired on Saturday the 29th of December 2018. Justice Esco Henry ruled in favor of the Public Service Union against the Public Service Commission on behalf of 5 government employees. And we understand that is just the tip of the iceberg, because it has opened the way for other trade unions to take on the struggle of more of their members who feel that they have been cheated by the system, overlooked by the system, rather than, well, it's a form of cheating anyway, overlooked by the system, to take to the nation's courts to have their case settled. And in our previous program, we highlighted the fact that we believe that every member of the Public Service Commission should resign forthwith, because the judge's ruling is damning enough to serve as an indictment of the members of the Public Service Commission in terms of how they went about their business. They talk about the ruling talk about an absence of fair play, an absence of objectivity. And we are suggesting here just another look. That means, in essence, that the people, the promotional system that was at work in the case of these 5 people and the positions that they were aspiring to may well not have been awarded on the basis of meritocracy. That's what it suggests. Why would we not want to do that? Have we not, from the beginning of a child's education, in the home, in preschool, in elementary school, and in secondary and tertiary educational institutions, have we not always advocated that the system is meritocratic? And the school, as a microcosm of the wider society, leads our children, socializes them into believing that life and success through life is based on merit. But you become an adult and you expect that in a system, a governmental system, that consideration will be given on the basis of merit. Consideration for employment. Consideration for movement up the ladder within your different institutions. But to have to go to court and find, hello, look, fair play was not involved in this. Objectivity was not involved in this, etc., etc. What does that tell us? What does that tell us? One of our resolutions for 2019 must be to return to those fundamental principles. We must commit to insisting on fair play, to insist on objectivity, insist on transparency, insist on the application of meritocratic principles in all aspects of life in Vincentian society. It is important, dear friends, that we stand up in defense of these principles wherever we realize that they are flouted. And finally, dear friends, an end to corruption. Our final resolution: a commitment to end corruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We don't have to go into details about it. Vincentians are aware of how corrupt our society has become over time. We've recognized that there is no end to the corruption. But we can, if we so desire, end it all. We have that power as a people to really bring corruption to an end. The beneficiaries of corruption thrive. Because for them, mammon is most important. And people who are corrupt have to splurge. They don't have a choice. They have to show what they have earned through corrupt means. Let us commit, dear friends, in 2019 to end corruption. Just as we want to end crime, delinquency, deviance in the Vincentian society. And as always, dear friends, we leave you today, Tuesday, the first day of January 2019. We remind you, it is 4,389 days since the disappearance of J8VAX, piloted by Dominic Gonzalez with Rashid Ibrahim on board. They disappeared on the 19th of November 2006, a Sunday. We remind you that it is 2,976 days since the disappearance of another SVG Air aircraft, J8SXY. This one piloted by Suraj Lakram. J8VAX was coming from Canouan to St. Vincent. Last communicated with the tower at the E.T. Joshua Airport just a few minutes out, just over Beckway. Communicated with a Liat that was passing by just before it was supposed to land. Disappeared without a trace. J8SXY disappeared going in the other direction, having left St. Vincent and the Grenadines on a mercy mission that was never fulfilled in Canouan. The plane never arrived. It was piloted by Suraj Lakram. Just another look remains to this day, the first day of January 2019, convinced that we've not gotten an wholesome report. Indeed, for the second aircraft, J8SXY, the public has not been treated to the kind of extensive report that was presented. But from our vantage point, just another look never accepted it. For J8VAX. What was it about the SXY that we didn't wish to discuss? Was there something? Or was it that, why is it that the government did not insist on the extensive kind of reportage for SXY as we had for VAX? More questions than answers still exist. And we leave you as always, reminding you of the gruesome death on the 19th of September 2008 of Patricia Bowman, trying to get to work on a rainy day, and the wall of somebody's home collapsed on her. What manner of society have we become that we still deem it necessary to insist that if Alban Bowman, her husband, wants justice, he has to pay for it? What kind of society do we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And in 2019, with some of our leaders, public officials, other groups, find it necessary to ask for justice in this particular case. We have kept it here, just like we had kept for many years the issue of Sammy Maboy, until such time as the legal fraternity thought it necessary to act. And eventually, a decision was made. Not necessarily what some would have liked, but it was made. Will we see that in the case of the gruesome death of Patricia Bowman, where in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, are we as human beings, when we allow this kind of situation to pass by? The insurance companies, of course, they don't have anything to pay if the court doesn't rule on the incident. And the owners of the place, well, what exactly is their stance? You know, what exactly is their position on this particular case? Alban Bowman has to sit in his home every day, trying to come to terms with the fact that he's living in a society that he loves, he's part of, that he cares for in his profession. He cares for Vincentian society. But what does he get in return when he needs caring for? What does he get in return? Are we rebuffed by our legal system? We have some lawyers here who are anxious to read or to talk about or to write about what is right and what is wrong. They're experts in explaining the law in Vincentian society. But some cases they don't touch. And this is one of them. Why? Why? Why are so many of our professionals who are anxious to write their weekly columns or do their commentaries on radio not eager to touch this particular issue? Why? Who was Patricia Bowman? And you know, someday we would hope that publicly we will discuss how it is Alban and Patricia Bowman were asked to leave the premises of Edgy Richards, where Lou had started her Saturday food business, entertainment business, where they seem to have gotten an assurance that they would have been allowed to stay there from the late Edgy Richards. Why were they forced to move? Forced to move to such an extent that Patricia Bowman ended up in Kanash. And it was on her way to work in Kanash that she met her death. And yet, her husband is being told that despite the fact that the inquest or inquiry or whatever established entities as being held responsible, the law says, no. You go. And if you want to make a case, you pay for it. What a society we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Can we, in 2019, change anything? Enough said. You've been listening to another edition of, in fact, a special edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look, on this, the first day of January, New Year's Day 2019. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. We're grateful to you for listening to us today. Remember, you can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info, or you can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. Hey, we are also on YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph.